This KFAN podcast is sponsored by Builders and Remodelers, exclusive Twin Cities provider of Elements Windows. Get the highest quality windows at unmatchable value. Visit buildersandremodelers.com for more details.
Something unexpected happened after Jeremy Scott confessed to killing Michelle Schofield in Bone Valley Season 1.
Every time I hear about my dad, it's, oh, he's a killer. He's just straight evil.
I was becoming the bridge between Jeremy Scott and the son he'd never known.
At the end of the day, I'm literally a son of a killer.
Listen to new episodes of Bone Valley Season 2 starting April 9th on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
If you want to chime into what's happening with your favorite KFAN shows, you can make your voice heard on the Bradshaw and Bryan KFAN text line. Just let us know what you have to say by texting your message to 64686. That is 64686. Standard text message and data rates apply.
All right, we're back. Hour 2 of today's Bumper to Bumper with Barreiro program. Dave Sinekin in the big seat today. JG back tomorrow. He'll be broadcasting from the Final Four in San Antonio on Thursday and Friday. Very pleased to welcome Jace Frederick, who covers the Wolves for the Pioneer Press. When you look at the whole schedule and figure out what games you're going to go to, in retrospect, Jace, that might have been a good one for you to show up to.
Yeah, we usually go more by geography. But, yeah, if you go with Denver, you're usually going to catch something entertaining in some way, shape, or form for the Wolves. Sometimes that's dominance, and sometimes it's just wild and crazy like we got last night.
Yeah, I mean, the Game 82 game in Denver was very remarkable and memorable, and it had obviously more meaning. But I think what we saw last night from a just spectacular regular season game, start to finish, and the individual performances, it's tough to top what we saw last night.
Yeah, I mean, I think if Nikola Jokic had gone 61, 10, and 10 anytime, that leads probably Sports Center that night because that's just, doing what he did with, frankly, like without Denver is a thin team anyway. You take away who are their top three players and Jokic just carrying them on his back and playing all 34 minutes of the second half in OTs. Like, that's just special, and especially a guy doing it kind of as like a final pitch in an MVP race. That's like national headline news. And to do it in a game that goes back and forth with a million lead changes, and Anthony Edwards then turns it up and joins the party and makes a bunch of shots to get Minnesota back into it, and it matters for standings both ways. Like, you just won't see regular season games like that. I mean, you'd be hard pressed to find a better NBA regular season game than that this season. It was nationally televised, and it was kind of the only game in that late slot at all. So I think a lot of the country saw it, and they were treated to a thriller.
Yeah, I still can't get over Jokic not sitting at all after halftime. And I felt like Harlan and Anthony never really mentioned that. They kept talking about his points, but I was just stunned when he came out to start the fourth quarter. I thought, all right, Wolves up 5. Now Jokic has to sit. Here's a chance to extend the lead. He doesn't sit, and he never sits again. And how does a guy that size, who's touching the ball every time down the court, and really, as you said, without Murray and Porter, he's counted on even more than ever. It's just remarkable that he has the energy to not just play 52 minutes in the last 34, but to still be as dominant at the very end of overtime. It's just, I can't wrap my head around it.
Yeah, he showed no signs of slowing down. I mean, there were maybe like 2 shots there inside 10 feet where he short-armed it that maybe he doesn't, but that just happens as well. The thing about it is, against Minnesota, Denver has nobody to guard Anthony Edwards. So every time it's pick and roll, Nikola Jokic has to be up there, pushing up, hedging off on the screen. Like, it's a lot of work. Ant will drag it out. You just kind of has to run alongside with him. Every single possession, Minnesota taxes him defensively, and then he has to carry the load offensively. What he did, like, Nickeil Alexander-Walker was amazing. Anthony Edwards was really great in the last 15 minutes or so of that game. What Jokic did was one of those unbelievable, like, you just don't see that performances, just in terms of, like you said, the actual performance and just the sheer volume. That was pretty spectacular. So that's where I think you go if you're Minnesota. Even if you didn't play great the entire game, like, to survive something like that and emerge with a win that you really needed, like, that's pretty big time.
Yeah, especially the way the game started. What was it, 19-3, something like that? It just had the makings of one of those games where they start slow. Their bench is already thin. That they can't come up with Naz and Dante to save the day when the starters are not quite ready to match the intensity. Just the fact that they were able to fight back shorthanded. I understand the Nuggets were too, but it had to be a very fulfilling win for this team. And when Gobert fouls out, late fourth quarter, you don't have him for the 2 overtimes. I'm sure most Wolves fans thought, well, Jokic has 5 fouls. He's not fouling out, of course. This doesn't look good. It's really a tribute to the squad that they were able to hang in there in those overtimes without Gobert's presence dealing with Jokic.
Yeah, I do think that speaks to Minnesota's depth. I mean, all season there's been a lot of talk of, I think people kind of raise their eyebrows at it, especially as the team struggle. But this idea of 8 starter caliber players on this team, and it's true. I mean, you could peek through Denver's rotation last night, and you can maybe find 2.5. It's Jokic, Gordon, and maybe Christian Braun would get into Minnesota's rotation. And so even when you have no Dante, no Nas, Rudy fouls out, you still have 5 starter caliber players that you can lean heavily on and know that you're going to have a fighting chance. And I think that's a pretty big credit to this team in the front office and just kind of the squad that they built. I know it's taken a while to mesh. I don't know what the cap will be of what they can do this year, but there's hardly any team that has 8 guys to where they can miss 3 and still put out 5 starter caliber players. But that is what Minnesota has, and they also have the depth of, usually a Terrence Shannon who was hurt last night, but then you can put in a Jalen Clark and a Josh Minot, and you see how much better those players are and how much more ready to contribute they are than some of the guys that Denver has to go to. Denver's playing DeAndre Jordan, who frankly just doesn't look like an NBA player a lot of times anymore at this point in his career. No disrespect to him. He was a great player, but that's just how much better I think Minnesota's roster has been built than a team like Denver, and I think it shows up in a lot of ways.
Yeah, you mentioned the guys like Minot, Dillingham, getting some, not a lot of minutes, but important minutes, and they made the most of them. And I mentioned it earlier, the knock on Dillingham is undersized. Can he play defense? We saw him make a couple of really important defensive plays, and he got to finish one off with the slam. Minot hit a couple threes. That's a real tribute to this team that they've figured out how to get their young guys to stay confident, stay ready. And Dillingham in particular, I think it really bodes well that he's really figured out how to be able to be a competent defensive player in the limited minutes he's gotten.
Yeah, it's one of those things that he has to do. They've told him that. And it's you're not playing unless you can defend, and unless you can defend your position, unless you can make plays on that end of the court and not be this liability that we have to cover up for. And we've saw that. I think every time he goes out there, even the times when he gives up buckets, he is absolutely giving it his all on that end of the court because he knows that's what's required to play for this team. Mm-hmm. They do a really good job, I think, setting a standard that young guys who come in, whether you're drafted in the top 10 like Rob Dillingham, or you're a Josh Minot who's a second-round guy, or you're undrafted or whatever, you have to live up to this standard. You have to do the things that Minnesota does well and expects, especially defensively, if you're going to play. And Josh Minot, he had defensive lapses earlier in the year, so guess what? He was way outside of the rotation. He moved in from 1.9 to maybe 12 in the rotation. But clearly he's done enough to earn his way back in to where when there are injuries, he is given a shot, and he took advantage of it last night, both offensively making shots and defensively. So I think Minnesota has clearly set a standard within their organization, and I think it helps guys to develop within that of, hey, even if you're not playing all the time, you have to be ready, you have to be willing to do X, Y, and Z, and you better be able to show that when you get the chance to do so.
Talking with Jace Frederick, read his stuff at the Pioneer Press, TwinCities.com. Let's face the elephant in the room, and that is the Wolves with the ball, final possession of regulation, of overtime. They've got the ball either tied, down one, with a chance to win the game, and it's been a recurring theme all season. The offense doesn't seem to know what it's doing. The play, whatever Coach Finch and the coaches draw up, it feels like it's the same thing every time. Get the ball in Ant's hands, ISO, let him hold the ball till it's down to 6 seconds, and then he attacks and either passes, turns it over, or takes a shot. How do they fix this? Because come playoff time, if it happens, there's no coming back from it. It's amazing that they haven't been able to get more efficient in the end of game, end of quarter scenarios.
Yeah, I just wrote about this just now, just posted it, and it's 0 for 14 now in a row on the last 10 seconds of games when tied or trailing by 3 or less from the field. And you're right, it's a lot of the same things. It is a lot of kind of almost broken looking plays, and I know this, guys have said it, that's not what we did, was not what we drew up there. And I've heard that numerous times of, there was some miscommunication, or some guys maybe kind of broke off what we were supposed to do. I do think a lot of it goes back to Anthony Edwards. I do think you'll see him kind of wave guys off and now we're not doing that. Because he just has such trust in his abilities, and sometimes it just gets them into such difficult, low percentage plays. Yeah. But I do think they also have to get more creative. I think maybe at some point you have to go, okay, we see what happens when we even start with X. So let's do something different. I always go back in my mind to that beautiful play they ran in the 2022 playoffs at the end of Game 5 when they needed 3 points. And it was like Jordan McLaughlin inbounds to Cat and then dribble handoff. And then McLaughlin goes to the middle of the floor. Anthony Edwards gets a backside screen to flare to the corner. McLaughlin hits him for the 3. They don't run anything like that. We don't see anything like that anymore. And that was a Chris Finch play, and I think they're going to have to get more creative and more sets that they can kind of dial up to maybe get Ant the ball in a catch-and-shoot type situation, or use Ant off the ball so his gravity either gets himself open or somebody else flipping as the opponent pays a lot of attention to Ant. But they've got to fix it because it has been atrocious, really. I mean, they went bad shot at the end of regulation, bad shot at the end of overtime, and then turnover at the end of the second overtime. Right. It just happened to go their way in that broken floor situation after that. A lot thanks to Russell Westbrook. But they play a lot of close games. I anticipate them doing the same in the playoffs as well. And it's got to be better than that. They have to give themselves more of a fighting chance in those situations.
Wolves don't win that game last night without Nickeil Alexander-Walker. You touched on it earlier. He was outstanding on both ends of the court from start to finish. And I'm sure Wolves fans went to bed thinking, well, that was great, huge win, had to have it. But has he priced himself out of a future with this organization? I don't know if it matters that the game's on TNT and everybody's watching. Certainly everybody can watch the game afterwards anyway, those that make these decisions. But he is adding zeros to his next contract by the game. And, from my standpoint, it feels like it's going to be difficult for the Wolves to keep him. I've read 4 years, $60 million might be somewhere in the neighborhood, if that sounds right to you. And the fact that Jalen Clark, TJ Shannon are kind of waiting in the wings, is that going to be the sacrificial part of this roster going forward, looking ahead?
Yeah, I would think so, because I just don't think they have any thought in letting Naz Reid go for any number. I really do think that that's somebody that they're going, okay, well, he is going to be a part of our future. And certainly they would like Nickeil to do the same. But to do that, I think there would have to be other roster moves because it just, you can't sign everybody. Like, everybody can't be playing for 15, 20 plus million on top of the big contracts you have. It's like your Gobert and your Ant and even your Jaden McDaniels. The money just doesn't exist. So I do think that unless this team is going to go into just booming level of the salary cap, like paying an abominable amount of luxury tax, I just don't see it happening. I will say, sometimes you don't know, because even, I know it was a small sample size, but Nickeil was so great in the playoffs 2 years ago against Denver when Jaden McDaniels was out that I thought he priced himself out right then and there. I was expecting to maybe get like $8 to $10 million a year, maybe mid-level guy just in what he showed. And then he went 2 for 8 for Minnesota. So I don't know if NBA teams are always as on top of it, but I think Minnesota being the team they've been the last few years and maybe being on more people's radars has definitely showed who Nickeil Alexander-Walker is to a lot of teams. So I wouldn't be surprised at all if you're right about that. Maybe this is maybe the last ride with Minnesota, but you never know. Things can change, guys can move, cap situations can change. So I wouldn't rule it out, but you're probably right.
How concerned should Wolves fans be that they're going to be able to bounce back, put that epic game behind them, and take care of business in Brooklyn tomorrow night?
I would say that it helps that Naz Reid and Dante DiVincenzo didn't play last night, and will kind of automatically, I think, provide some kind of boost in that they'll be ready to go. They'll be looking forward to getting back out there, and those are two guys that guys like playing with, so they'll be excited to have them out there again. So I think that'll help. I certainly think there could be a letdown for sure, but I think Minnesota does also know that any drop game here against anybody can be the difference between being in the play-in and not being in the play-in, and they certainly don't want to be in the play-in. We've seen them drop games in the past that were also meaningful, so we'll see. But I generally just think that two guys who usually provide a lot of energy, who guys like playing with, now returning to the lineup for Brooklyn should be an added boost.
Yeah, it's a homecoming kind of for Naz, so he'll be ready for action. Right. Last one for Jace. The big news today locally that Glenn Taylor has reportedly given up the fight. He won't appeal the arbitration ruling. That opens the door for the deal to go through. Now it goes to the NBA. What's the timeline as far as you're concerned? And a couple texters have asked, could the NBA say, really, $1.5 billion? No, that's not going to work in light of how the franchise has gone up in value. We feel like you should put a new number on that. That's not a factor. The deal's the deal, right? They've paid 40% already. What's the timeline? Where do we go from here?
I would expect it to be in the last couple months. ESPN reported that the NBA has already started kind of their work of getting through this process. I think this was the expected result. Like Glenn Taylor could take like the federal path to appealing or trying to get this overturned, but that was just never likely whatsoever. So I think now is kind of now you can definitely move forward. I think the NBA was already kind of prepping for this. So I think we'll get to the point where there's a board of governors vote within the next couple months here. And yeah, I from everything I've heard, like this is almost a cinch to pass through the NBA at this point. And like, yes, that $1.5 billion, it can look like a bad number compared to what else they've seen now, but the other sale prices that have emerged, clearly this is such an outlier that I don't think it would do anything to devalue other organizations, just given the sale prices that we've seen. So I don't think they're too concerned about that. And you can also pin that back up. Well, that was a 2021 number. We're in a different era now with what we've seen with like Dallas and now Boston. So I don't think there's really any concern on the NBA side. I don't expect there to be much in terms of hiccups here, and should just be a matter of time.
Great stuff, Jace. Great to chat with you. Enjoy the rest of your day, my man. Look forward to talking down the road.
Sounds good, Dave. Thanks so much. Have a good one.
You too. Jace Frederick, read his stuff at twincities.com. Covers the Wolves for the Pioneer Press. We'll continue our Wolves conversation at 4:30 or 4:35 as Alan Horton joins, freshly landed in the Big Apple on his epic call last night. We come back. The Gophers add another player to the new basketball roster and ode to a dead guy.
Something unexpected happened after Jeremy Scott confessed to killing Michelle Schofield in Bone Valley Season 1.
I just knew him as a kid.
Long, silent voices from his past came forward.
And he was just staring at me.
And they had secrets of their own to share.
Gilbert King. I'm the son of Jeremy Lynn Scott.
I was no longer just telling the story. I was part of it.
Every time I hear about my dad, is, oh, he's a killer. He's just straight evil.
I was becoming the bridge between a killer and the son he'd never known.
If the cops and everything would have done their job properly, my dad would have been in jail. I would have never existed.
I never expected to find myself in this place. Now, I need to tell you how I got here.
At the end of the day, I'm literally a son of a killer.
Bone Valley, Season 2. Jeremy.
Jeremy, I want to tell you something.
Listen to new episodes of Bone Valley Season 2 starting April 9th on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. And to hear the entire new season ad-free with exclusive content starting April 9th, subscribe to Lava for Good Plus on Apple Podcasts.
That's next on The Fan.
Catch the Athletics' John Krasinski all season long with Dan Barreiro as he breaks down all the latest local sports news, moves, and more, thanks to RBC Wealth Management.
All right, we're back, 4:22 on a chilly Wednesday afternoon. We're with you till 6 o'clock, taking you right up to Wild hockey tonight, Wild at Rangers. Again, bottom of the hour, Alan Horton joins on the heels of a riveting double overtime win in Denver. His thoughts on what he witnessed in Denver. We'll have Double T, Trent Tucker, 5:35 on Jokic's greatness and the big win for the Wolves. That coming up, as I said, at 5:35. Your Golden Gophers have added another player, another Minnesota native this time, via the transfer portal. This reported just recently, saw it on X. BJ Omat, I'm hoping I pronounced that name correctly, a Mankato native who started out at North Dakota, played for Cal last year, has signed on with the Gophers, and Nico Medved. BJ averaged almost 17 a game at North Dakota, went to Cal last year, averaged 11 points a game, but got hurt 4 games into the season, and that was it. So 6'8", adds to the front court as Medved, Thorson, and company build out their roster. That on the heels of Nico's former Colorado State Ram, Jalen Crocker Johnson, who announced a day or two earlier that he would be following his coach to Dinkytown, another 6'8" player. So slowly but surely, they will build out a roster for next season, as the cupboard was very much bare. Isaac Asuma, the only player who played last year, back with the team. But some good early returns for Coach Medved and his staff.
And now, it's time for Ode to a Dead Guy.
It feels like I should take over the bit, because I know Dan would do it today for sure, when you lose a big-time movie star. For most of us who are, 30 plus, I would say. Maybe that's a bit young, but Val Kilmer is a name that, for those of us that have been going to the movies for the last 40 years or so, that's a pretty prominent movie star. Obviously in recent years, not so much. She'd been battling cancer, throat cancer for, I think, the last 10 years. In fact, I believe he lost his voice at one point, succumbed to pneumonia. I think it was early this morning. 65, obviously way too young, but a lot of big-time movies and a lot of movies that resonate, probably most remembered for Top Gun or The Doors. For me, it's The Doors. I mean, his portrayal of Jim Morrison was just unbelievable. And we've seen a lot of these now over the years, Queen, Elton John. That feels like one of the early, and now obviously Bob Dylan, that feels like one of the earlier music biopics that really resonated, because this, as Kilmer was known for, he threw himself into this role, which made him, as time went on, reportedly difficult to work with. A number of directors just said, I'm not going to work with him. He just makes things too tough. He was a big-time trained actor. When he got into Juilliard, the famous acting school in New York, he was the youngest person ever admitted at the time, at 17 years of age. Grew up in L.A., tragically lost a brother in a pool accident, which sort of molded his life and how he looked at it. But he kind of broke through in the mid-'80s with some goofy movies like Top Secret, like one of those airplane spoofy spy movies, and Real Genius. Those are two 80s movies where he's playing in goofy movies, and they really turned that into a leading man kind of an actor, right? With, as I mentioned, The Doors, Top Gun, Heat, Tombstone, and he was Batman, and not the most memorable era of Batman. It was post Michael Keaton, pre George Clooney. Brett Blakemore, did you ever watch Batman Forever? I think Jim Carrey was the Riddler. That was that one.
Yeah, it was that one. That wasn't one of my favorites.
No, I don't think it was anybody's.
But I loved him in Top Gun. We actually I pulled this audio, funny enough. Tell me where this is from.
Chris.
Morning.
Something strange happened to me this morning.
Was it a dream where you see yourself standing in sort of sun god robes on a pyramid with 1,000 naked women screaming and throwing little pickles at you?
No.
Why am I the only person that has that dream?
I was told to pull that today. And I've never seen the movie.
What is it from?
Real Genius.
Oh, from Real Genius.
Yeah. So, I mean...
So going back to like 86. So
yeah, exactly.
Memory's a bit sketchy.
No, but Top Gun would be the one for me. I was forced to watch many an 80s movie as a kid, so that was one of them.
He was Doc Holliday in Tombstone. I mentioned this to my wife today, and she looked at me like I was from another planet. I never saw Top Gun.
Just to this day?
To this day, I've never seen Top Gun. I'm trying to figure out why that was. So when did it come out? Was it like...
Oh, boy.
Obviously 90s, right?
86.
86. All right. So 86, I'm a couple years out of college.
It's great.
No, it got to a point where it's like almost like this badge of courage. Like, don't people have movies like that where like, all right, I missed the big run and I've just never felt the need to see it. Like, when E.T. came out back in 81, I'm a college kid. Mm-hmm. I don't need to see this fantasy, extraterrestrial movie. So for years and years, I just refused to see E.T. I eventually saw it. But even the new Top Gun, and Kilmer was in the new version as well, I'm told, because I didn't see that one either. So I'm curious, does anybody else do that?
Really good too.
Does anybody else miss the boat on a huge movie and just all right, at this point, I'm just not going to see it. That's just my thing.
I bet there's a lot of people that feel that way about like a Star Wars or something, where they just never got on the boat and they're just going to be bitter and jaded about it and
that could
refuse
be
to
Lord
watch
of the Rings.
Lord of the Rings. That one took a while for me.
I kind of that was Game of Thrones was that for me. Like I never got it. Everybody loved it. I never.
That's great.
It's too many episodes for me to now devote to it. So I feel like
Are you still not?
I've still never seen it. No, I've not seen Game of Thrones.
That was a COVID. Finished it in like 2 weeks because I had nothing better to do. And it was unbelievable. It was awesome.
Yeah, and that's what I've heard. Everybody says that. Texter guy says his badge of courage movie that he won't see is Goonies.
Well, I get that. I've seen it.
Yeah, I think I did. I don't recall.
Well, you would know if you saw it.
I know. I just don't remember it. I may not have seen it. I'm thinking of Gremlins. I know I saw Gremlins.
Gremlins, yeah, I've seen that
but
too.
I'm not sure I saw Goonies.
The Truffle Shuffle does nothing for you?
I don't think so.
Okay, and you probably haven't seen it.
Another texter's never seen The Godfather.
I've never seen The Godfather.
Really?
Yeah.
All right, so that's one you just have to see.
Okay.
The first two. Do not waste your time on the third.
Third's out.
Third is just a travesty. If you haven't seen The Godfather, I mean, I don't know how well it's aged, but those actors, the cast is just so incredible.
Isn't it really long?
Yeah, it's probably long, but I don't know. It doesn't feel like it. You know, you've got Marlon Brando and Pacino and De Niro and just a cavalcade of stars. But we absolutely digress here. Val Kilmer, a terrific career, an enigmatic star, one who kind of faded away the last 20 years or so. But man, what a rock star, movie star he was from the mid-'80s, probably till about the turn of the century. And just really, really sad news to see him pass away today at the age of 65. We'll pause here and we'll welcome the Vox of Timberwolves basketball. Alan Horton is in the Big Apple getting set for Wolves Nets tomorrow. Do you have the final sequence that we can play real quick to lead into this? This is how the game ended. Somewhat raspy after calling, 48, carry the 58 minutes of basketball. This is what it sounded like.
Cross court, Jaden McDaniels hit ahead to Conley. Now Ant with it with 4. Down by 1. Ant with a left-handed dribble drive in the paint. Kick out. Nikhil. He hoisted at the buzzer. It's short. Off the front rim. Now wait. Is there a whistle and a foul? C.J. Washington blew the whistle. He put his arm up. Nikhil got fouled.
The defender goes into the offensive player on this shot attempt. We received 3 free throws and placed the game clock at
3 free throws coming up for Nikhil Alexander-Walker. They're going to put a 1/10 of a second on the clock. Oh, baby, what a decision.
Indeed. Not real popular, as you probably heard there from the crowd at Denver. What a night. What an experience for Vox to bring the play-by-play to us on the Wolves Radio Network. Alan Horton joined.
Something unexpected happened after Jeremy Scott confessed to killing Michelle Schofield in Bone Valley Season 1.
I just knew him as a kid.
Long, silent voices from his past came forward.
And he was just staring at me.
And they had secrets of their own to share.
Gilbert King. I'm the son of Jeremy Lynn Scott.
I was no longer just telling the story. I was part of it.
Every time I hear about my dad, it's, oh, he's a killer. He's just straight evil.
I was becoming the bridge between a killer and the son he'd never known.
If the cops and everything would have done their job properly, my dad would have been in jail. I would have never existed.
I never expected to find myself in this place. Now, I need to tell you how I got here.
At the end of the day, I'm literally a son of a killer.
Bone Valley, Season 2. Jeremy.
Jeremy, I want to tell you something.
Listen to new episodes of Bone Valley Season 2 starting April 9th on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. And to hear the entire new season ad-free with exclusive content starting April 9th, subscribe to Lava for Good Plus on Apple Podcasts.
It's on the other side.
Brace yourselves for an epic night. Brantley Gilbert is hitting the Ledge Amphitheater May 9th with his powerhouse country rock performance. This is one show you can't afford to miss. Check out KFAN.com. Keyword contest to see how you can win your way in today. KFAN.com. Keyword contest.
We are back, 4:37 on a Wednesday afternoon. It's the Bumper to Bumper with Barreiro program. Dave Sinekin sitting in today. Justin Gard will be back hosting Thursday and Friday from the Final Four in San Antonio. For now, let's welcome the radio voice of your Minnesota Timberwolves, freshly landed in the Big Apple, getting set for Wolves and Nets tomorrow night. Alan Horton, kind enough to join us fresh off the airplane. You probably don't feel real fresh. Did you get a good night's sleep? Were you able to sleep after that one?
No, usually after a game, David, it's great to be on with you. It takes a little while to wind down, and that game, for all the people in the Twin Cities who stayed up and listened, we appreciate that. That was well after midnight, and so by the time we got back to the hotel, you get a little something to eat, you kind of wind down a little bit. Next thing you know, it's 1 or 2 in the morning, and you got to get up at 7 or 8 and start packing and make sure you drop your bags off, get to the bus, get on the plane, and then I think we hit just about every rough patch of air from Colorado to New York. So we managed to hit it all. It was a bumpy 3.5-hour flight. But Wonderful. We're all here. It makes it a lot easier when you win those type of games rather than lose them. And that game felt like it could have been won or lost about a half a dozen times each way. No doubt. My tongue is only slightly in cheek when I ask you this. You know, you're playing in the thin air, the high altitude, making things even more difficult for players in a double overtime game. Yeah. Do you feel it as a guy that's running that voice for 3+ hours? Does working a long game in Denver affect you at all? Not so much in Denver specifically. What does though is the overtime sessions. It's funny, you don't even really think about it, but probably 98% of the games don't go to overtime. So you're just your voice gets very accustomed to just a 4-quarter game. Sometimes they're a little shorter, sometimes they're a little longer, but generally it's around the same amount of time. But then you throw in an overtime, which means the game was exciting to begin with. Now you got an extra 5 minutes, which is at a high rate, and then a second one. Yeah, the voice starts to feel it, and you certainly feel even more tired today. I'm not even the guy. I'm not complaining because I'm not the guy who was out there playing 50 minutes last night like Anthony Edwards and Julius Randle and Nickeil Alexander-Walker. The big minutes put up by a lot of players in that game. The game started in an all too familiar fashion where Denver, we know they were motivated to try to win one against the Wolves, and they came out and just took out the Wolves early. Were you thinking, like a lot of us were, like, oh my goodness, here's one of those games where they get blown out early and never get close? I had a feeling that's the way it was going. And it also felt, Dave, like it was one of those games where, the Wolves just came out flat and they didn't have the intensity that they needed. And maybe it was because they found out Jamal Murray and Michael Porter Jr. weren't playing. And you're thinking, man, is this another one of those games where there's a couple of starters out and the team starts to relax a little bit and not have the same intensity that you need, whether you're playing the Charlotte Hornets or a depleted Nuggets squad or an Indiana Pacer team. It shouldn't matter what the opponent has out on the floor. You should play a certain way every night. And it really did not look good when you're down 21-5. And Jokic just makes everybody on the floor. I think if you and I suited up for the Nuggets, Jokic could make us maybe from I don't know where we put ourselves. Probably pretty poor players, you and I, Dave. I think he'd make us average. He's that good. Well, that's where I was going next. That's the headline coming out of this game from a national perspective is 61, 10, and 10, 52 minutes, including the last 34. I've said it a couple times. When the Wolves ended the third quarter up 5, I was feeling really good, thinking, all right, well, Jokic is going to sit now. So he gets some non-Jokic minutes. And there he is coming out saying, no, coach, I'm good. We need to get back in this game. They go on a 10-0 run. And you just marvel at the kind of basketball player, a guy we've never seen anybody with his specific skill set. You have to step back and just marvel at what he can do, don't you? Absolutely. And I think the Nuggets head coach Michael Malone said it well just this past week. He continues to impress, even though he's already won 3-time MVP. He's already set these amazing records and what he's done. He continues to find different ways to impress you with the way he plays the game of basketball, the way he thinks the game. His shooting touch is just unbelievable. He's now, he's added a 3-point shot to his game. I mean, he would reluctantly take those in the past, but not shoot, at a high clip. Now he's shooting 40% plus, and he's taking, last night I think he had 4, maybe 5 in the game, and those were huge. Like, you add that to his game, plus the way he just carries his teammates. There's a reason why the Nuggets are almost 20 points better per 100 possessions when he's on the floor than off the floor. He's that impactful. And even though he doesn't get credit for his defense, a lot of times he's playing the long game, and maybe he'll give you some stuff at the rim, but he quickly makes up for it at the other end. I just love the way he thinks the game and plays the game. It's really special. I mean, he had a pass last night, a sort of a wraparound behind the back bounce pass to somebody under the basket that, only a handful of guys in this league even see, much less make that pass. And he put it right on the money. He's truly special. He really is. Yeah, he is. And his eyes must have lit up when he realized Rudy got his 6th foul, was it late fourth quarter, and had to take a seat. And now there goes that defender, and he still had some energy. But kudos to the Wolves, man. Without
without Rudy, and obviously without Nas, that they were able to hold their own in those 2 overtimes and figure out a way to win was really a nice development as we move forward, don't you think?
Boy, and they needed it too, Dave. I mean, there's 4 teams basically battling for that 5 and 6 spot, the non-play-in spots. And with Memphis falling, that's made it a 4-team race for these 2 spots. And you just can't afford to drop games. I mean, that one was crucial for Minnesota last night. And Denver has a little bit more of a cushion being in the number 3 spot. So we might not be done with Wolves Nuggets. It might be a 3rd straight year that this team matches up in the postseason, which I think would be I think that'd be a good matchup for Minnesota. It sounds funny to say, but the Wolves have a ton of confidence against this team right now. And you mentioned that beginning of that 4th quarter when Michael Malone really, I thought, rolled the dice there. He's like, I'm going to go for it here in the beginning of the 4th, try to put the hammer down. And they did. They built an 11-point lead with about 6.5 minutes to go. But the Wolves, they just don't quit fighting. And as badly as it can look at times, it can look just as great a few moments later. And Anthony Edwards, just saved his best for last with 24 of his 34 in the final quarter plus 2 overtimes. He came up big, and he wasn't the only one for Minnesota.
No, he wasn't, because without Nas and without Dante, the bench is shortened, and it felt like you're going to have to count on Nickeil Alexander-Walker to give you extended minutes, extended offense, and have a big game. And man, as I was talking to Jace Frederick a little bit a while ago, he's adding zeros to his next contract. It's going to be tough to keep him, but he was the MVP for that team last night. I'm not sure it was particularly close. He was just stupendous.
Yeah. I mean, he played 18, so he came in, I think, midway through the first and then played the final 18 minutes of the half. He knew he was going to have a big night with Dante DiVincenzo not being able to go with the suspension along with Nas. But Nickeil was unbelievable. He hit some clutch threes and of course made the game-winning free throws. And it's really fun to root for people that are good basketball players, but also good people. And Nickeil is both of those. I mean, he's just been such a stalwart for this team since he was basically the throw-in with Mike Conley coming over from Utah 2 years ago. He's played in 203 consecutive games for Minnesota, regular season and postseason. He's been so valuable. He's been one of their elite wing defenders. He's so versatile, and he's been so important to the success that the Wolves have had over these last couple of seasons. And it was great to see him have that kind of a night.
I think the Wolves really showed the difference between these 2 franchises last night in depth. We know Denver lost some players, and they were going to be a bit thin this year, and not having those 2 starters obviously hurt them last night. But going down 8, 9, 10 deep, Denver doesn't have anybody that can help them, whereas we saw both Rob Dillingham and Josh Minot get some spot duty and make the most of that time, which, barring, you hope nobody gets hurt, obviously. That's usually the storyline as we get into the playoffs, which teams lose players. The Wolves have to feel like these guys have proven that if they do have to step in, they're ready for their moment.
Yeah, and TJ Shannon was out injured last night. He probably would have had an opportunity last night, and he's shown that he can play at this level. So Chris Finch does have some options on his bench, and unlike earlier in the season, when those were unproven options, now he has, some bankable data and seeing it firsthand of how it looks with Rob, how it looks with Josh or TJ or anybody else, Luka coming off the bench. There was that stretch in January and February when you really needed those guys. And Jalen Clark emerged from not even playing to all of a sudden being in the rotation for the last 30-plus games now. So I think the Wolves do have some great depth. And Denver, over the years, they let Bruce Brown go. Then last year they let KCP go. They've whittled down and built more. They've had to rely more on Jokic, which I think has resulted in some of the big numbers he's putting up this year. I think he made the 61-point triple-double. That's never been done. He had a 30-20-20 game against Phoenix a couple of weeks ago. That's never been done before. And the reason he's doing that is because he has to. They just don't have the firepower, especially with Aaron Gordon missing almost half the season this year. And Jamal Murray was inconsistent early. He's been better of late, but of course didn't play last night. But I think that's a really good matchup for the Wolves. They are the deeper team. And I think just the biggest thing, it's kind of like when the Wolves play Phoenix. They have an incredible confidence against those two teams, but they also have a healthy respect for them too, because they know, Durant and Booker can get going at any moment. Jokic and Murray can get going at any moment. So if you let up, you're going to be in trouble. But the Wolves just have this really quiet confidence about themselves against those two teams in particular.
Wolves had a chance to win at the end of regulation. Wolves had a chance to win at the end of the first overtime with the ball, and a chance to win. And familiar script this year. They've had a hard time executing end-of-game offensive operations. You've been there to call every one of them. At this point, when it's that sort of situation, are you holding your breath and thinking to yourself, can we run something a little different? I mean, why is this so difficult? Because from a fan's perspective, it just boggles the mind that we don't see creativity. We don't see the efficient execution we see from this team for the other 47 minutes, most likely.
Yeah, it has been frustrating. It's been a real head-scratcher. And Chris Finch is right there with everybody as far as how the plays that they call and the execution of it. Last night they even tried something at the end of regulation where, they called the timeout. They didn't inbound the ball with 10 seconds left in the front court. They elected to go from the back court. And I thought for a moment, maybe was there a rebound and we took a step and then you can't advance it. No, they chose to go from the back court and they chose to try to give Ant a little more of a runway and kind of spread the floor a little bit more. But really all that did was kind of eat up 3 or 4, close to 5 seconds by the time he gets up in the front court. And then what happens? The opponents are running 2 at Anthony Edwards. It's just a flat-out certainty that that's going to happen. And so then Ant holds, and then he gets rid of it, and now you're down to 3 or 2 seconds, and you get a Julius Randle, sidestep 3 for the win, which is not his forte. Yes, he hit the big game winner against Phoenix at Target Center this year, but that's not the kind of play you would naturally draw up for Julius Randle. And I just think so much stuff happens on the perimeter too, Dave. I would love to see something go inside to maybe come back out or go inside, especially in a tie game. All you need to do is draw a foul, and then you're going to the free throw line for 2. So there's that option as well. And the Wolves really kind of, quote unquote, lucked out with the foul on Russell Westbrook against Nickeil Alexander-Walker. Otherwise, the Wolves would have come up short on that. That was a crazy call to end the game. I'm not sure I've seen too many of those through the years.
No, we just played the end of the game before this last segment here. You sounded a bit surprised that the whistle happened. I certainly was. You don't expect necessarily that call on the road at the very end of a game. It wasn't obvious. I mean, certainly Russell ran into his arm, but you sounded a little surprised that, wait a minute, his arm's up in the air. He called a foul here.
Yeah. Well, first off, I couldn't even hear that there was a whistle. So, but you kind of, even if you can't hear it, you kind of notice what's going on the floor and the way the players kind of reacted. I was like, okay, is there a whistle? Was there a foul called? And it turns out there was. So there's always that moment. And people in the arena were already celebrating, thinking, up where we are in the second deck broadcasting there in Denver, they were already celebrating a win and Jokic's big night. And then so you can imagine the disappointment when they heard that there was a foul call and there's 3 free throws with 1/10 of a second left to play. But the end of game execution has obviously been a struggle. The coaches know it. And they're working to try to figure out what they can do. You obviously want to get your best player the ball. The other team's focused on not allowing that to happen. And so it's a chess match that the Timberwolves they just haven't been able to win that consistently this year.
Last couple for Alan Horton, radio voice of your Minnesota Timberwolves. You're in New York with the team. Long night, bumpy flight, a day off before getting right back at it in Brooklyn. We know you get Naz and Dante back. They should be fresh. But
yes.
Any danger to you that after an emotional, charged, unlikely double overtime victory that the rest of the squad's going to be ready to face a team that they should beat, that really doesn't have a whole lot to play for, but has won their last 2 games?
Yeah, they went into Dallas, who's still fighting for a playoff play-in spot, just the other night and won a game. And so, they're going to come out. We know D'Angelo Russell is there, and he can have big moments. He can still make great plays. I don't think there will be a letdown. I just think we're at the point of the season, Dave, where everybody is so in tune with where the standings are and who's jumping whom, and what are the Clippers going to do tonight in their game. It's just you're constantly watching the standings. At least I am, and I know the players are in tune with it too. So they realize there's no time for a slip up now, especially after all the good things you've done in the last 3 games. I mean, to beat Phoenix, Detroit, and then at Denver. That was always going to be a tough stretch right there, but to come out 3-0, find a way to win all 3 of those games. And I know the Wolves have had Phoenix's number, same with Denver, but it's still you still have to go out and execute and win those games, and they've done that. It would be a big step back not to take advantage of this gift at the end of the season where you get Brooklyn twice, you've got Philadelphia, and you've got Utah. Obviously, Memphis is still playing for something, Milwaukee as well. So you cannot afford to have a setback against one of these lesser teams.
Yeah, and you mentioned we've been watching the standings, really paying attention to Golden State and the Clippers. Golden State's in L.A. tonight and has Denver, I think, Friday night. So they've got a little meaty schedule this week. But as you said, the Grizzlies now have fallen right into our lap with the firing of Taylor Jenkins. They've dropped 4 in a row. Who knows what their motivation is, as they went from, second in the West at one point, now down to 5, 6, maybe 7. That's a game that, we didn't really think was going to be that. They're all important, but we didn't think Memphis was going to have to be fighting for their lives. Suddenly that looks like the most meaty game left on the schedule next week.
Yeah, it's and Memphis has already beaten Minnesota twice. It's been one of the teams they've struggled against this year. John Morant is back. They fired Taylor Jenkins, but that's not going to change your outcome against teams like the Lakers and the Celtics, who they then lost to with their new interim coach. And so they've lost 7 of 8, and they could be in real trouble because I believe their schedule is pretty tough coming down the stretch. And so there could be some more losses there. But all you can do for the Wolves' perspective is just win those games in front of you, and then go to Memphis and try to pull out a win against a team that, hopefully they're reeling even more than they are right now when the Wolves go there next week.
Yeah, Grizzlies have the Heat tomorrow on the road at Detroit. They're still at Denver. They got the Wolves at home. So yeah, you're right. They got a tough stretch down the road.
And Miami's won 4 or 5 in a row at this point. I think they go into Boston tonight.
So that will not be easy for Memphis tomorrow night. Yeah, things are looking up. I'm feeling good that we're going to escape the play-in as long as we just take care of our business.
There's just been so many twists and turns throughout this whole season. It's just been an absolute roller coaster. And fortunately, I thought the 8-game win streak, I thought there would be not enough time for this team to take a little more, one more dip. But they did, and they dropped 3 out of 4. But now they seem to be back on the upswing, winning 3 in a row, and they could find themselves, when it's all said and done, having that. The biggest thing about avoiding the play-in is having that almost a week off at the end of the regular season before that first-round playoff series. That was the recipe for last season. To have that week off before Phoenix, then to finish off the Suns and have another week before Denver, I think that played a major, major role, because I think when you give Chris Finch and his staff a week off to rest, recuperate, prepare, go through the game plan, I think this team is really good. I think they can have some success like last year if they have those kind of periods of time where they can focus in and get a couple of days to prepare for an opponent. They didn't get that against Dallas. And probably last season, you look back at that 7-game series against Denver, they should have finished that series off earlier. And had they, I think it might have been a different series against Dallas. Of course, we'll never know, but that's what. When teams win titles, that's what they do. They finish off opponents. They don't mess around. They don't play long series if they don't have to, and they take advantage of the schedule, because it's brutal if you don't do it otherwise.
I think I speak for every Wolves fan. Sign me up for 3-6 Wolves Nuggets right now. I think the networks would like to see that too.
Third straight year would be great.
Give us 5, 6, 7 more games between these two teams. Alan Horton, thank you so much, buddy. Rest your voice, and we will look forward to listening to you on the Fan tomorrow night. Wolves at Nets, 6:30 Twin Cities time. Thanks, my man.
Dave, thanks. Appreciate it.
Alan Horton, obviously voice of your Minnesota Timberwolves. The Twins are playing baseball after a 2+ hour rain delay and have a 1-0 lead, bottom of the second. Byron Buxton goes yard, first inning, 2-out solo shot into the barren seats in left center field in Chicago. A 1-0 Twins lead, bottom of the second. Pause here. Top 5 at 5 is next on The Fan.
Something unexpected happened after Jeremy Scott confessed to killing Michelle Schofield in Bone Valley Season 1.
Every time I hear about my dad, it's, he's a killer. He's just straight evil.
I was becoming the bridge between Jeremy Scott and the son he'd never known.
At the end of the day, I'm literally a son of a killer.
Listen to new episodes of Bone Valley Season 2 starting April 9th on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.